So, awakening is the end of ownership. It's the end of thinking that I have a life, that there's only life, and it's happening for no one. So it's the end of identification with the mind, which is just a stream of thoughts, which seems to be the core of everything we are. And that falls away, and we realize that thought is just occurring. It's just arising and dissolving, arising from nowhere, dissolving nowhere. And the identification with the body falls away as well. And this can be seen visually, and it's also known, it's also experienced, because the body feels weightless, light, and it is an appearance like everything else. So this can come as a shock, because when we're wrapped in suffering, everything seems very, very real, and this can come out of the blue, and often it happens that we awaken to emptiness first, in which case we may not know what the hell has happened, because it's just seen that there is nothing. So there are no chairs, there's no room, there are no people, and yet there's everything appearing in this emptiness. So it is seen that the form and the formless are one. So nothing is separate. But this can be quite a cold experience, as in it doesn't have the joy, so we can just lose our anchor points. Oh, can you?
Someone coming already?
Yeah.
Not me.
So reading. Right. So a lot of desire can fall away in that, and what moved us maybe no longer moves us, and that can seem a little bit disorientating somehow if you don't know what this is, because before we had all these drives, we had all this desire to get away from what is. But now that is gone, and so the self is seen through, and the drive is gone, and life just continues. So this is like the dark night of the soul that St. John of the Cross wrote about. And if you know about non-duality, then you know that it's hopeless. Also, you've seen through the self, so you know that there's nothing you can do for the seeing of love, for the seeing of fullness to occur. And the seeing of fullness, the seeing of love, is what restores intimacy to life. So there's a loveness with everything, with a cup of tea, with plant on the table, with the chair. The difference between self and other just disappears. So there's just love. And with that is a radical acceptance of everything as it is. So that there's no argument with life, that falls away, so that everyone you meet in a sense is accepted as how they are, because they couldn't be any different. So also the mind itself dissolves. It can dissolve fully and can stay dissolved. For some people this happens to a greater or lesser degree, so that there's just the stillness. And stillness can be seen. Stillness permeates everything. And stillness is the sacred, so the sacred is visual as well. It can be seen, it is felt, and everything is being seen for the first time. So it's like using your eyes for the first time. Now I'm thinking of the Matrix film, but like, it's like you're seeing everything fresh. Every moment is fresh, so it's mesmerizing. So all of that focus, all of that attention that was tied up in this mind stream, suddenly there's an opening up into where you are. So you are now where you are. You're not trying to escape this reality. You're just here. And there's no location for that. There's no location for being whatsoever. So location falls away. There's no one inside this body or outside this body or any other body. There's just love. So everything in life becomes absorbing. The energy can be seen as well, the aliveness of nature, the aliveness of everything that appears can be seen. Everything is pristine. There is perfection. Everything is perfect. So that is the beauty itself. It's what artists have tried to capture, and very well captured sometimes. Just that astonishing beauty, even in what we would call imperfection. So there's a real openness to and emerging when you meet with somebody else in this place, because in a way you become like an empty space, and even in conversation it's like the beingness is kind of fundamental and the words are kind of extra. Not to say that words aren't important, or if you're into a certain subject you are going to still like that perhaps, but so there is just a meeting and you're connecting somehow deeper beyond the words, beyond the appearance, beyond all of that. The honeymoon period of awakening can last for months or even years, and the search for meaning is gone, and that's gone absolutely in the sense that there is no need to justify this. In a sense, it's already full. It's like all desires being realized at once. So it's a real homecoming. It's like being in the womb. One imagines like everything is just given. So the moment is rich and full and beautiful. If it's staring at a brick wall, when it's staring at a brick wall, and that's more than enough. And there may come a time when you want to come back into life and maybe bring your life into alignment with this seeing as well. So most people they maybe want to do something more, I don't know, whatever, maybe the helping professions or something to express this, or maybe they're more happy in what they're doing, or maybe the relationships are easier in some way, maybe there's more ease in that, or maybe sometimes it disrupts relationships, so it can make things more difficult because it's a simplification of life. It's no longer living with a fantasy of who someone is or what you want from them or what you expect. It's just moment by moment by moment, so that when you're facing problems, when life is difficult, it's faced very much step by step. So this is the end of identification with time-based reality, which is the mind. To say time is the mind, because it's never where we are. It's never, the mind cannot touch this although time appears in the timeless appearance, we still relate, we still, have relationships and so on. But the relating is different, and the experience of time is very changed because it's collapsed in sense, so that when someone is here, they are very present, and when they're gone, they're very absent. So, there's somebody who want to get in. It's like, hi. Sorry. No worries. So we're born into wholeness. Hence we're spontaneous with our emotions, our feelings, how we are. And we're seduced out of that by those people we call parents or caregivers, or who tell us this is who you are and this is what I want from you, and bit by bit identity comes and it's formed. You recognize yourself in the mirror, you recognize yourself through speech, you get images in your mind. And very, very few, some people don't have that, it never fully forms, but for most of us we have that fate of identifying and entering into the story of dreaded change and dreaded death, and awakening puts an end to the dread of death for some reason, not exactly obvious, even though in a sense that identification being gone, say, well, what sort of fear? But the life of the character continues, and it matters to the person, but there's no identity, but it still matters, the life and the love and the what happens in life still matters. Problems still appear, there can be suffering, it tends not to stay around because there's nothing. The neurotic mind is not as active as it was, so things come up and they fall away back into emptiness. So in a sense, it's the end of that ongoing suffering that most of us have, or most of us have experienced. So, but it's absolute rest, and it's the seeing, like I say, of everything and nothing. This is everything and nothing appearing as one, and there's just the end of the idea of being inside and an outside. So there's just what's appearing, there's just what's appearing, and I can't think of anything else to say. No. So yeah, there's no way of, it's a kind of grace is happening, although awakenings are happening quite a lot of the time, and doubts can appear also after awakening. So some people continue to doubt. I think this happens more with doormats in particular. Maybe I'm wrong, but sometimes we seek for validation of a teacher or whatever, and there's a point at which you need to stand on your own 2 feet, really, and to own this as well. So it's a good idea to integrate this, to talk about it, to write it down, to communicate it in some way. Because there's a lot of people as well who sit in meeting rooms who've had this experience and pretend not to, or will not share. And some people have had the experience as well of sharing their experience and being shamed into silence, and maybe thinking they haven't properly realised this when in fact they have, and then they haven't mentioned it. And so it's a good idea to really own this, just like owning anything else. So is that long enough for an introductory talk? Anybody got any questions?
Why is it a good idea to own?
Because so that you can withdraw the projection, because there's the projection onto the one in the front can be really intense for some people. The idea that there's a specialness there, and that is withdrawn in the seeing of this, but sometimes I think there can be a little bit of that left if it isn't owned, if that doubt is there. So it's a good idea if you want to really come into your own kind of authority, which is always, because this isn't a given of that, it isn't a given of thinking for yourself, I don't think. I think it paves the way towards that, but also in a way you've got to get beyond that, beyond caring about non-duality in a sense. So owning it is a total withdrawing of that projection, and so you're no longer in the power of that, and finding your own words for this is important, I think, in terms of that. And even authority itself is, we are interrelated, we are people around us, we can regress, we can always regress on a psychological level, which still exists, or we can evolve. So the people around us, it's important who we have around us too, so that we get people who reflect that as well. So at the end of the day, you have to just, is that, the kill the Buddha. It really is that you have to let go of everything you've learned, I think.
Stop looking in time, stop seeking in time, like you say, projecting.
Yeah, well, the seeking stops, but if the doubt is there, it doesn't stop the rest either, but if it is there, it's sometimes for someone who is, it can be, you just have to start to express it. I think it's the way to kind of do that. But so there is afterwards, during the honeymoon period, everything, you may not want to return to life at all, but if you do, there's relative meaning as well. There's still meaningful activity, that's relative. It's not done out of a lack. So if you're an artist, you're likely to paint. If you're a writer, you're likely to write. Your expression may change slightly in that as well, but it's not the end of looking for meaningful activity or finding a relationship or finding love. And it doesn't necessarily make you good at choosing partners either. It doesn't give you boundaries. It doesn't make you strong in certain respects. It opens the heart. It makes you more compassionate. It makes you more empathic. It makes you more able to be there to listen and just be. So it's the holiday of holidays in a sense. It's, as Jean Baudrillard said, holidays are boring. So this isn't boring. It's the end of boredom. It's leaving the self behind, so you don't need to go anywhere. It's absolutely being where you are, so there's no need for entertainment, there's no need for thrill, or maybe a freedom for that as well. Some people become more outgoing, but usually it's much more restful, and being alone feels very natural too. And sometimes we have glimpses of it, and they can change you a little bit, but glimpses can last for a second or a couple of weeks, and you may think that you've had a glimpse where it's abiding. If you've got a lot of trauma there, maybe you think this shouldn't be there. If you've got suffering that comes up, sometimes that can obscure things a little bit.
Sometimes get the sense that like putting on a role to be sociable. What happens if you don't do that and you're just staying there?
What happens. Well, yeah. I mean, you can still put on a role. Some people do as well, and I think often as well that kind of almost attracts projection. So the one who is awake puts on a role of, perfection in a sense. It seems to resonate a lot with people. They tend to, there's a lot of people fall for that as well. It's not like you can put on a persona if you're awake. It's just that often that falls away, but it can be used, and it is often used, and just because the integration of the shadow, we have the stereotype, don't we, of the spiritual one as not having desires, and not being angry or not being whatever, but we are totally duped by appearances all the time. It's so difficult to get beyond that we believe what we see, we believe what we hear, but actually we don't really know anybody unless you live with them. So yeah, but yeah, it's good to, when the role falls away, you don't need to do anything, and people tend to like that anyway. They tend to like being around someone who knows who they are and comfortable just being. I think you sense that. I think you do. I think it's...
Sometimes people just keep talking and talking, and I find that ultimately overwhelming.
Oh, right, okay. What, at you, or not like less than a two-way sort of conversation, or?
Yeah. So I just feel like, I'm just gonna rest here for a minute. There's just a sense of
conversational control. People who just keep talking and no energy
or
vampires.
Or sometimes they're just, I guess they're happy, like you said, to be able to be safe and share. But it just feels weird.
You sense it's not genuine, or it's not relating, it's just filling a void, or something like that.
It's something a little bit abusive or something, because I don't know. I can't make sense of it.
Oh, okay.
So then I put on these things, and then I'm like, oh, okay, and then it kind of reestablishes some kind of balance. But then I feel I'm just putting on this.
Maybe look at your relationships. Listening is a codependent defense. Or not defense, it's codependent. Talking is narcissistic, not in a pathological way. So if your relationships aren't kind of balanced over time, then maybe it's worth looking at as well. Or it could be, if you feel sapped and tired around someone, it can often be a signal of something as well. So maybe you give more than you receive, maybe.
Well, definitely when that kicks in.
Yeah.
Some people pause and they're like, oh, this is cool.
Oh, you must get a lot of that then. Maybe you attract it.
Well, it's in my job, so but that's helpful to look at. What am I blind to? Am I using silence as a defense? Am I dropping into some kind of defense?
Probably not. Silence is okay. I mean,
or listening. I think you said listening as a codependent.
Yeah, it feels safe if you're very codependent. It can just hide, you know. Anyway. So.
How much control is there?
How much what?
Control. Is the sense of control come and go?
It's not sense. I mean, it's just.
What's the sense of choice maybe that?
Well, there come, you know, choosing goes on, but there's just no one choosing. But they're still kind of going through the, I don't know, the menu or whatever, and that, and then whatever. But it's just seeing that everything is arising. It can be quite a shock when you see that for the first time. I remember that with the mind, because I find that quite odd that the mind is just kind of happening by itself, and I just thought, ooh, why didn't I notice that? Everybody must have noticed that. It's, yeah, so, I mean, you can kind of see it as well. So, I mean, there is no chooser ultimately. But in a sense, it doesn't take away from the personal element of a life, and say, memory changes, time is lost to reality in a sense, but it's really precious memory too. And so, but it's kind of, because there's no doer, there's kind of compassion that runs through that as well. So it's that kind of, all those failures and things that were regretted, where it's kind of like, oh God, you know, that was tough, and that was really sad, and so. But yeah, the human story is, I think, it's just absolutely beautiful, and like, it's just got a real movie quality about that. Every single story of like, because it's so hard to navigate life. Like, not that anybody's navigating it, but it's just tough. I think I mentioned before, but yeah, there can be a lot of energetic phenomena around this as well. So a lot of kriyas, which are spontaneous movements, or illuminations, which is seeing is knowing, or smells, or images that aren't present, like incense, or there can be lots of different phenomena that can arise during this, which all seem very ordinary. That's the shocking thing about it is, in my own case, I was so in turmoil. I couldn't see a way out of the situation I was in. I was really in a bad way. And the surrender happened, and it wasn't like, oh, how did that happen? It was just like another life. So there's no looking back. It was just, there's just, wow, it's just gone. Just absolutely gone. So it's interesting, because I think the energy is so high, but it's so still and so grounded that it's just, you're not who you were in a sense. You're just not. So it's hard to. There's this big split in the sort of history in a sense, and so you're more kind of like just watching the breeze through the trees, and And yeah, because the senses are just amplified as well, can be, but everybody experiences that differently. So, you know, it's like seeing a sky for the first time, it's a tree for the first time. Everything is just mesmerizing. Well, not even mesmerizing, just you're just seeing it. You're seeing it because you weren't really seeing it. It's just the mind. It's strange how the mind can obscure what is just right in front of you. But some people get moments of that, and they do, like in the flow, or when they're mountain climbing or whatever, athletes and stuff, the flow experience, or even sitting in a meeting when the self dissolves a bit and just sitting in a meeting, and that's really relaxing. And for some people as well, awakening can just be, they can just slide into that really slowly without realizing that's what's happening. Then one day it's like, oh, it's gone, you know, this ownership thing is just completely gone, and not really knowing when or what, you know, like just it is gone. And some people it seems to come and go. But yeah, there can be problems with thinking or recognizing things afterwards, depends on the intensity or whatever. And it's quite, I find it certainly pleasant not to speak. Not that speaking was difficult, but it was just much nicer not to speak, because I would have rather sat around and stared, I think. But you know. There is something hypnotic about the conversation of this, I think, that a lot of people resonate with, as if it's kind of sensed on some level, or, you know, that we know it or remember it, or. But it's always a case, and it is that confusing thing of like, well, everybody's awake, you know, everybody is, but it's just not recognized. But it's just there. I mean, the perfection is there. That's why there is no specialness. There really isn't any specialness, which I guess is just easier to know if it has happened, because you know, it's absolutely known that there's nothing lacking in anyone. But that's just easy to see. That's what's frustrating, because a lot of people get hooked on this and they don't do anything else with their lives, and you sort of think, oh, it's a shame, you know, you don't go out and do this or do that, you know, just, it's alright. I mean, it's nice to listen to talks and stuff, but it's like, you know, you've got this life, you know. Yeah, go on.
Does it give people more desire to achieve their goals in life? Like some people want to be rich, some want to be famous, some just want to find love.
Desire tends to fall away for quite a long time, like almost absolutely, you know, like for some people after awakening, it's like they'll change, like maybe someone who speaks about it straight away, maybe there's just a natural flow into that without any thinking about it or any kind of cognition or, oh, I would like to do, just doing it, you know. For others, I think desires start to come back, like, but maybe altered, so maybe they're a bit more based, they're a bit less superficial, maybe not so much on the, you know, the journey, the money sort of thing or the outcome. It's more something that is sort of nourishing in a sense. So, mind you, if you're an awakened narcissist, you might just go right. No, lots of, I don't know, whatever. Become a speaker and get lots and lots of people or whatever. But I mean, generally speaking, it'll be something much more in tune with this. So if you're peaceful inside and not desperately trying to escape life, then it'll be something that will kind of sort of echo that in a way, but also past desires might be remembered because we often, it's like we come in with certain qualities or dispositions, and often we're told, oh no, you have to worry about, you know, getting a mortgage, maybe, or your self-esteem will come up a bit. Maybe you realise everybody's the same, there's nothing lacking here, so you might have the courage to follow something you never had the courage before, or you might be well enough to follow something. So desires are there, but it's not so much craving the end point, it's more organic, I think, more just an unfolding of what's kind of naturally there, maybe when it's recognised. Though if you haven't, if there's certain things you weren't good at before, or maybe you were had certain issues before and you suddenly wake up and you might come across some, you know, as they say, spiritual bypass, or maybe some things that you find very difficult, so you might need some support or some encouragement with certain things as well, if you were always bad at life in some way, you know, so it doesn't necessarily flow. So, but generally it does. Just sometimes you need a good kick up the arse.
There's some good roots for that.
Yeah, no, that's true.
How do you experience things like anger now in the body when it arises, or does it not arise?
Anger's, well, that's an interesting one because I was a doormat. I was never in touch with my anger really. Well, I was a bit, but so that's something I've had to but to recognise that I wasn't using that, because anger is healthy. So it tells you when someone's trespassed your boundaries, you need anger for that. When there's been unfairness, you need anger for that. If you don't know what unfairness looks like, you may not know after awakening. So if you don't have boundaries, it doesn't necessarily give you boundaries, because you're open and you're just smiling at the world, so you can in a way be more vulnerable. So for me, yeah, I have anger. It's always been very fleeting for me. So I've never really had neurotic anger, so it can be quite intense, but it's gone pretty damn quick. If you had narcissistic injury, for instance, you could still have rage, in which case you could still be churning around. So I don't think, I don't know, and there's no research that I know of on this, but I don't think it touches deep narcissistic wounds. I don't know, but I don't think so, because there's always that sort of, the guru who you find out years later has been abusing people, but some people don't even know they've been abused because they don't know what it looks like, and they were probably a fawn responder type, someone who is quite grovelling when they're under threat, and someone who dissociates, so who's right brain dissociation, which is they tend to go into freeze state, so they got both. Basically they were people who were punished as kids for asserting themselves or for protesting unfairness or something, their parents. So they tend not to, often don't even know that they should be angry. So sometimes you really need to it doesn't, you know, we can all have distortions of reality and we're all becoming, so this awakening is into greater consciousness, you know, you're more, as Tim Freke would say, you're conscious of more, so there's, you know, because of the stillness, you're aware of all internal stuff. But if you're seeing people as above you, you've always seen that, so you won't recognize that that's distorted. So you might need to realize it, hold on, you know, it should be like this, because you've had no one reflect back to you what normal is. So you need to recognize that somehow as well. So just as the narcissist can become a guru at the front of a room and obviously be very beatific and lovely or whatever, behind the scenes beat the crap out of someone, I don't know, whatever. But there can be some remnant of being a doormat as well. You know, a very peaceful one, so that when you're stood up for 2 hours in the evening, you're like, that's a nice bench, just sit here. You know, it may make it even, because I was like that, but just like any time I had to wait for somebody, it'd be like, excuse to sit on a bench, watch the cars, or, you know, this sense of time is. God, I can't remember your question. It was anger, wasn't it? Yeah, it's such a taboo in spiritual circles, but there really is healthy anger, and I think that's, I mean, we need that. You know, it should be all of it. I mean, that's just integration, that's a shadow. We need all of that. That's where we can recognize what is right, what is wrong, what's fair, what's not. You know, it makes us trustworthy, I think. You know, otherwise we go along with stuff that we shouldn't, and we kind of, in a semi-conscious level, know that we shouldn't. Not that I've ever done that. Interesting.
Is there any books out there that relate to non-duality?
There's fucking loads.
Any that stand out?
Depends who you're into. I mean, it's just, you know, go check out. I mean, do you watch stuff on YouTube or?
No.
Oh, there's loads. Just Google it, like, or put it on YouTube, and Watkins Bookstore, I don't know, in Cecil Court and Central London's got loads, and I think most people who start talking and stuff have books. I don't yet, because I'm a lazy fucker. But I'll get around to it. I did start something, but yeah, I don't know. I mean, everybody likes different people, so I don't know. Paul, what would you recommend? You give a recommendation.
We could start with classics like that and Nisargadatta, things like that. Type in a search on Google.
Yeah. I think there are very many books. Just type in non-duality is quite. Yeah, you need to find out what you resonate with, really. Nisargadatta is quite heavy duty, and it's quite full on. It's not really my cup of tea. It never really was, to be honest. But I prefer skeptical thinkers. A bit of Robert Saltzman or whatever. There's Richard Sylvester, of course, and Tony Parsons is the big one in radical non-duality. And got loads and loads and loads.
Going slightly back to, you mentioned a wounding can still be there. So if there's if you get the sense that this process is happening slowly and subtly, with like glimpses and realizations, and then just being and all these kind of things. And then have you encountered, either in yourself or in people you've worked with, like more traumas surfacing that you didn't know were there, or that are stopping you from awakening further, and they like kind of are like, hey, look at me.
So I've heard that. I mean, yeah, it can really stir things up. It can, but I mean, nothing's going to stop you, and I take it that's what's happening with you. So yeah, so it's bringing things to the surface. Yeah, that can be really painful. It can feel like you're being stopped somehow because of the suffering, I guess. Is that how it is? Or
Yeah, but it also feels like my obsession, healthy obsession with non-duality, is kind of working hand in hand with other therapies I do, like ecstatic dance or sound therapy or self-inquiry and other, just loads of other things that I'm doing, and I feel like I kind of bathe in this non-dual message, and then feel really great for a bit, and then something comes up physically and then manifests mentally or in my relationships, especially with my parents, and then I kind of work with it and let it just be and have some kind of epiphany or something, and then it kind of I go back to like, oh no, it's just some non-dual kind of bathing again, and it's like this, yeah. And every time I kind of work on some trauma or some conditioning or karma or whatever you want to call it, it just feels like another layer has come off, and then the non-dual aspect of things seem clearer.
okay,
Like
it's a sort of cycle, but it's good as well. You use the movement stuff too, because that's really good. Well, you'd know that with the trauma and stuff. What about also talking? Do you talk stuff out too, or not? You do?
Yeah, I'm lucky to have some friends who are always willing to listen to what I have to say, or someone I've started doing therapy work with as well.
Ah, brilliant. Because I think a lot of people get stuck in it, so be with the emotion, just feel it. But there's also that, verbal ventilation, expressing stuff, because that's creating new neural networks in the brain as well, and also it gets you to the point where you can start to feel and speak at the same time. And so it's all. So if you're doing every single angle.
It's exactly. It literally happened a couple of weeks ago. Exactly that. I had to do all this movement stuff, and then I talked to someone, and as I was talking to them, it was all this like, oh my god, like these epiphanies, and it felt like something shifted, but only after I'd verbalized it.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, no,
that was, you just described it perfectly.
As stuff is going, then yeah, definitely, that's great. When did you start? When did it start all happening then? Or?
It's been, I think like all the inner work, all this about a year and a half ago to 2 years ago, I was like little interests here and there, and then for the first lockdown,
Right.
it was kind of like just going into just a place of just like everything's shit, life's shit. Okay, what's the point? And that was kind of like, there's got to be something else. And yeah, naturally just started gravitating towards non-dual speakers like Rupert Spira. That was, it felt really like things were resonating, but I couldn't put it into words, and I didn't really get it. It took about a year of just immersing immersing myself in YouTube videos, which I still do. It's my favourite thing.
Yeah.
I just, any spare moment, I'm just watching YouTube videos, and often just end up in this weird half asleep state where I'm kind of not even listening anymore. And then coinciding with that, just doing things like I've done psychedelic journeys and lots of like psychological introspection.
Oh, the psychedelic stuff's gonna bring stuff up, doesn't it? Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Fast tracking.
Mm.
Yeah. Oh, that's cool. Sounds like, is that sort of experience of being steered a little bit as well, just kind of knowing where to go or to follow, or is it just kind of?
I think I just quite lucky because the people I do them with, they just run these really magical experiences. So I love that aspect of it, and then very much like this, like just conversing with people after the ceremony is just as powerful as the ceremony. It's like just being around people that you can talk to about things, and then afterwards I'll have little moments just in day to day towards my intention or something.
Right.
Except one journey where it actually felt like I actually felt the self go for,
Right.
but it was an experience because the mind came in afterwards and it was like, tried to claim it, but there was a moment where it just felt like I never existed in the first place. And I didn't even feel like it was me saying it. So
Right.
it was like the words just came out, and then I just started laughing for ages. But then at the end of the ceremony, me came back in and it's like, I had this experience.
Right. That one. Oh, cool. It's exciting. It's exciting.
Yeah, it's been a fun journey.
Well, fun and probably awful as well, like for the sign of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So would you say more traumas can come up after awakening as well?
It can for some people. I mean, that's also a common one with energetic experiences in general. I mean, I didn't, in my case, it wasn't that, it was just an absence of anything really. But yeah, I've heard of that. It's almost like there's space for that, it just rises up. It seems to. Yeah, particularly when there's that kind of meaning and being, coming and going of it, because it seems to be when it's back, it seems much more intense, so I think so. I've come across that quite a lot, and I think so many others have as well. Mine, it was quite a sort of, when it kind of went, it was just, I just wonder what problems were. Like I couldn't access that, like at all. My psychology seemed to have gone completely, and I couldn't. It was like I need a problem to work on or something. But
Sudoku.
What do you mean? Like
Just do puzzles.
real life problems, of course. No one can escape those. It can be bloody shit. They can be really difficult. Awake or not awake, or the neurotic stuff tends to stop. Yeah, the ruminating things tends to stop. But then the emotional flashbacks don't have any cognitive content, so it's just the emotion. You can get that too. But that's some people don't. Or of course you might think it's you, and you might be living with somebody who's triggering you the whole time, just pressing your buttons. You might think, oh gosh, I'm so emotionally dysregulated, and it's like, all right, the awakening into emptiness can be tough if that's it. I mean, that's the. I mean, I think Richard talks about that quite a lot. Richard Sylvester, and the despair that you can feel during that. I never had despair because I didn't know there was anything else. I didn't know what it was. So, yeah. Yeah, some people can find it really painful to meditate if they've got a lot of trauma as well. I don't know if you... But it's a good thing to do if you don't know what you want. So.
Why is that?
Because it brings up the emotions as well, and if you don't feel... Feeling moves us. At the end of the day, it's what you feel. So you got fear, it's going to kind of keep you back. If you got something you desire, something you feel passionate about, it can override that as well. So you need to, I don't know, be in touch with that, and then you kind of recognise what you want. A lot of people are stuck; they just don't have desires at all. They're just not in touch with any of that, you know. And of course, awakening can leave you like that as well, because all the motivation is gone, all the normal drives that is normally where we're just moving towards something because we want to feel good, and we have an idea that it's going to make it better, but it doesn't. It's whatever it is, but it just doesn't.
Or you can hire people to tell you what to do.
Well, some people don't need to hire anyone. There's plenty of people to tell you what to do. So many altered states can come and go in this as well. So you can have samadhi states in this, so it can seem to go really deep at times, and less deep.
Do you meditate before you awakened?
I attempted to. I was in a lot of suffering, so I just couldn't really. I don't think I'd done much at all, like just a few minutes would have been torture. So I just went into total no mind. Months of no mind, like, and now it comes and goes, you get some thought and then the emptiness, thought and empty. But, so it was quite a shock. No, not like the non-shock, should be shocking, but it's not. It's just very natural. So, yeah, I don't think I'd ever have done as much as like 10 minutes, to be honest, like, seriously. But I do now, sometimes just because I know what's good for me and I like it, but it's a state of meditation anyway, so there's no mind. Probably because there's a taboo, it feels like there's a taboo against meditating after awakening. Never. It's not. I think there is this sort of conditioning that kind of goes around as well, like life is enough, therefore I shouldn't want anything, or life is enough, therefore my relationship, should be enough, or, I think sometimes you can get stuck in that so subtly without realising, actually, this is shit, I'm not enjoying this, I want to change this, or I'm, it's a lot of the stuff that you have to unlearn as well, I think, just let go. And, because there's, if you've got good people around us, sometimes they give us permission to feel a certain thing that we maybe don't want to own to feeling, or so we're constantly being opened up or closed down anyway, because no matter awake or not awake, we're just, you know, we're not islands. We're just affected by everyone around us. We're constantly absorbing, so it's good to have good people around you if you know what a good person looks like. I mean, you can really drop in this as well, and then sometimes it seems like, I mean this can deepen for me through the gaze or through when I'm in an idle mode. I think it's like awakeness really likes idleness too, so you really sink into it more. If you're stuck in a queue or you're you know, if there really is nothing to do, I think it can really drop. I mean, that's what I find. So although being and doing merge, you know, there are situations that seem to kind of enhance it somehow or make it more drunk. So especially in kind of samadhi states, seem to like outdoors in particular, you know.
When you're into samadhi, is it always a deep one, or is it sometimes static and bits and pieces of stuff, or are you just completely gone?
It's usually completely gone, but it can be something or whatever. Yeah, it can be occasional thought can sort of waft in, but often it's just empty and quite drunken. And yeah.
Do you know people who ended up on the street because
I don't really hear of that. I mean it must happen. I'm not sure. Because a lot of people just get on. If you're doing something you want to do, people continue. It depends what was there before. It's interesting the way, like with Gary Weber, because he's absolutely no thought at all, and he's working in, I don't know what he works in, sort of sciencey stuff, but he just found he could just carry on and nobody noticed any difference, which it's quite odd. You sort of think, because you're so, you know, there's nothing going on, but people don't generally notice. It's quite funny. It's actually quite visual sometimes. If somebody's empty, you can kind of see it, you know. But so I think it's just individual motivation go. I've never heard of that really. Maybe it happens more in India because you can at least get some food or something. I don't know. I'm not sure. It's more the tradition, isn't it? It's the fear, isn't it? A lot of people of waking up and who's going to take care of my kids, who's going to, you know, but it all seems to kind of just transpire naturally. You know, you care about your kids, you still care about your kids, and care about, I don't know, the bills or whatever, you know. And someone like Wayne Weirs, who was kind of nomadic and lived in a van. I mean, he always said that if he had to live normal life, he said that in an interview, Bad Cap, I think, he said that he wouldn't be able to survive that, I think, sort of, and he didn't actually, but he got ill, I think that's why, but he committed suicide actually, so, but that's really rare, but anything can happen. I mean, anything can happen. Depends on the character that's there. Most people, they do something that's more fulfilling in a way, or, you know, or life just seems to flow. So there's not so much worry about stuff, so it's just easier, I suppose. He did in the end, yeah, he did. You can't fathom that. How do you think it happened, I suppose? But it's very unusual, so like, I wouldn't worry about that one. Yeah, very unusual. But, but it can be frustrating in relationships as well, because if you're not engaging in drama, then a lot of relationships can be centered on that, so there isn't any response to that, so relationships can fall away if they're very hedonistic. If they're, well, you might become hedonistic, you might still be, but it's more likely you're probably not going to be, so, because that's more driven as well. So if someone is in a sort of likes to fight or likes to play games, if that fully, you can't do that with one. You need to, they say about using your relationship as a spiritual practice. Some people talk about that, but sometimes it's better to just go. So yeah, a lot of people will change their friendships sometimes as well, and yeah, it can be difficult. Or if you try to communicate about this at first, which a lot of people do, they try to talk about it to people, and because it's so wonderful, and of course nobody's interested. Nobody really wants to know. So you kind of drop that.
So it's best to get one's life sorted and work on one's character, regardless of awakening.
Well, never use the word should, because if you want to, you will, but if I think if you're in the honeymoon period of it, you just wouldn't care less, but
as in you just wake up to your life as it is, you're not waking up to anything. Any I don't know, dreamland.
Well, yeah, well, I think initially the idea of even looking at anything and working on it is just nuts. It's just so, if you're so gone, but then it's I wasted a lot of time because I didn't see certain things, I didn't waste a lot of time, it's great, but there's certain things you recognise, and my God, if only I'd recognised that sooner in a sense, because I was blind to certain things, and so yeah, it is, but you're not going to look unless you want to look, or you suspect there's something there, or you feel that there's something up, and really act on that, in which case I find it quite exciting. I mean, I love looking at the psychological stuff, so to me it's exciting, and I love talking about that and what's really going on here, and so and I think you become really growth orientated anyway, so most of us just want to get, bring everything into sort of consciousness, just to be just to get, because it's fascinating, it's just fascinating, and then the way you keep changing, I think it's exciting that.
Yeah. I find out I'm trying to trigger fear, and I'm trying to trigger anxiety because I want to feel something.
You don't feel much, do you not then? Or
I sometimes wonder if I'm a psychopath, but I don't think I am.
I'd be very surprised. So, alright, okay, so you want to feel more?
It's like you were saying that there's the loss of, and then it's like, okay, so I'll just sit here. And this part of me is like, oh, it'd be nice to experience something, it'd be nice to...
So something's happened there then? Has there been some sort of awakening, or...?
I think if there's been one, it's been in dribs and drabs. and then there have been these big shifts and things, but I don't know if, you know, I can't say I sat somewhere and suddenly it's like, it was, it feels more like...
Oh, what? So it's a real roller coaster? But sometimes there's no...
No, more like lots of different experiences.
Right. But not much emotion.
What do you mean by not much emotion? Like now my experience is that I don't feel as much emotion as I used to maybe 10 years ago or maybe 5 years ago.
That's kind of normal too, because you can be emotional neutrality can kind of be there a lot of the time, and it's a kind of comfortable no emotion, and so I find that a lot of the time there's just nothing there, and that's I think that's natural, you know.
But if I'm still wanting, if there's a part of me that's like, oh, it'd be nice to experience something.
Right. Okay.
I mean, not that it matters, but I'm just wondering, do you ever think, oh, it'd be nice to, I'd love to experience some passion or some drama in something in my relationship, or I don't know, I miss the drama.
I find that maybe, I mean, it sounds to me like the seeing of emptiness in a sense, that because the drama's completely gone. And yeah, I can remember sort of, you know, it just seemed like, oh, where's all that gone? Like, you know, there's nothing to move me. And in a way, it could kind of make sense to some extent what you're saying. I'm not sure because it's a long time ago, but it could just be that. It's like you lose all your anchor points and what to do this or to do that. Who cares, you know? And but in a way, it's kind of a relief too, because you're not so. I've got to go out tonight. I'm gonna, you know, that's all gone, and so maybe it's something's died there as well, and you know, or not. So it's sort of you wish for some passion. Did you used to have a lot of passion then?
Yeah, I remember at one point that something seemed to have happened, and I felt like my joy had gone. And I remember my boss at the time said, "You need to be hungry for it." And I was like, "That doesn't make sense." It just didn't make sense. And yeah, it was just gone.
Okay.
The hunger, the drive, the knowing. Okay, it was just. So then my career completely changed, and just stayed at home. Didn't apply for jobs anymore. Just stayed home, and then some stuff started to happen, but it was quite a dramatic shift. And
yeah, sounds it.
I just didn't have. But I think I still, part of me, like wants it, or I miss it, or.
Well, maybe because the love isn't there. Maybe love hasn't been seen, so there's not that, you know, sort of juicy, the inner joy, you know, the causeless joy or the connection. Or is it? Or do you experience that sometimes?
I can't say I experience it all the time.
But sometimes.
Yeah, definitely. Life feels nicer.
Right.
And things feel nicer. Like it's like. But it's not all the time. Like some days I'll be like, oh, what am I gonna do today? And then there's a bit of like, oh, it'd be nice to have some thing going on, some color or something to color in the black and white.
Okay, would you say black and white? So it's something, it feels like something's lacking at least some of the time then?
Yeah, I would say so, some of the time.
But not all of the time?
No.
Yeah, it's definitely some shift has happened, hasn't it? But maybe not the...
It's the only way I can explain all the things that have, like the dramatic things that have happened.
Yeah, because it doesn't sound like a negative thing, does it? It's just a cessation of wanting. It's gone.
Yeah, thanks for those words, yeah.
Yeah, you're alright. It is. Yeah, that makes sense. That's probably awakening, but maybe not. The fullness hasn't sort of come yet. So some sort of, it's like something has gone, but you know, where does that leave you? It doesn't leave you anywhere. You're just this window shopper and going around going.
Maybe it's part way there. I can sense some of that, like, but it's not all the time.
It's not all the time then, so maybe it is a bit of coming and going. When it is feeling complete, does it feel complete when it's, what's it feel like when you're not wanting that passion then?
I'm just doing what I'm doing, I don't even...
Alright. Is it that even when you're not doing? It's like if you're just sitting, is it?
I don't know. I find it's hard to talk about it, kind of.
Okay.
It's like, I don't know.
Okay. Something's going on. That sounds good.
It can be frustrating sometimes. Like I notice the persona, like the messiness and the craziness, and it's just doing.
Maybe that's why you're doing all the listening as well, is it? You seem to be absorbing everybody else's stuff rather than, sort of 50-50. You know what you said about people talk.
Yeah, I don't know.
No?
Sometimes it feels like that's what's meant to happen.
Okay.
It's supposed to be the space that I'm offering them to do whatever they're doing. But I don't know. I don't know. And it's like, okay, I don't know, that's fine. But it's nice to also know sometimes.
Yeah. True. That makes sense.
Maybe you're just expecting something definite to happen instead of just accepting. Like listening to what other people are saying and expecting their experience to go the same as yours.
Not exactly. I just noticed at some point I've had enough or something.
So it might affect you different to Dawn's experiences, so maybe you'll get there eventually.
Oh, I'm not trying to get anywhere.
That's the point.
You're not allowed to try to get anywhere. But there's always a part that wants to get somewhere anyway, I think, that you want to or not. I think.
Yeah, maybe it's like understanding something.
Have you tried those activities like dance or sound bathing?
Looking into it. Yeah.
Are you?
Yeah, I have something planned on Sunday, actually.
Wow.
Ecstatic dancing.
Yeah, I do that. I do it regularly, and it really helps.
Yeah.
And sound therapy as well.
I tried a gong bath once. And it starts to feel like what I'm doing. Now I'm trying this and I'm trying that. So why am I trying all these things?
Why not?
You
Well, I'm
said you
gonna try
wanted
this. I'm gonna try the extent. I felt like, let's do this thing. Okay, cool.
You said you wanted to, didn't you?
Wanted to do it.
To find passion and to instigate a feeling.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. That's probably how I'm gonna end up doing ecstatic dancing.
Sounds good to me. Maybe we could all do with a bit of ecstatic dancing.
So I'll come back and report on the passion.
Interesting. Has anybody else got any awakenings to confess? Anybody else hiding?
It's interesting because sometimes it's like, how do you know? Like the woman in your previous meeting,
Yeah.
and she didn't know. And sometimes it's like maybe it's the seeking that is you think you're not awakened because you're seeking.
Yeah.
It's like maybe I am to a certain extent. I don't know. Like for me, it was always like I want to stop suffering. I want to improve my relationship with my parents. And then lately, it's just been like just letting go, trying to fix that as well. Just letting suffering happen if it's happening. I don't know. It as like just slowly letting go of things. So it's like maybe letting go of, like you said at the beginning, owning it, just being like letting go of figuring out if you're awake or not.
Well, maybe there's a time for that, but I think it's also good not to figure it out. Maybe it's just to go to hell with everybody else who has. I think for me it was like, I don't give a shit about awakening. You know, when the doubts come, when I used to get doubts, there was absolute realization of total emptiness and total peace and total love. I mean, that was just obvious, and yet there's these, you know, and it just seemed incongruous to me, like, but it was only, like, for me, I really had to, that's what, when I got in touch with my anger was when I stopped doubting, actually, because it was like, fuck you guys, you know, it's, I felt too, you know, my rule was to keep yourself small. So you might, I think some people do keep these rules very subtly, like I am the peacemaker, or I am just letting go of all that as well, making sure that that's, you're not playing some part in, you know, what's behind that. It's like, well, I'm actually scared of anger, or I'm scared of, you know, we hide behind all these, you know, I am the loyal friend, which means I'll take a bashing and I still love you, you know, like it's, you know, it's getting to the point where you're just spontaneous with how you feel, you know, that wasn't okay, or, you know, I don't know, for me it's like, the doubts, it's worth looking at too, but if you want to let go of that, maybe that's the thing to do, just let go of it, and then, you know, they tend to fall away, because that sort of process of looking for validation, or you listen to someone else, you're like, oh, but they said this, or, you know, like, practically, I think everyone pretty much goes for validation of some teacher, or whoever's meeting they went to, and, you know.
Will you tell me if I'm awakened yet?
The devious, narcissistic, and shame you into silence. Like, who is the one that thinks they are awake? Show me the one.
Point.
So, but even that's just a big word salad stuff as well. It's like, that can happen. Someone can say that to you, you're shamed into silence, and yet there's just peace and there's love and there's no boundary and there's boundlessness and shame of being silenced by some narky bastard in the front of the room. Like, it's just like, I don't know. But most people are lovely. Most people are lovely at the front of their own lives. It's only a couple. It only takes a couple, doesn't it? Yeah, but it's true. She was still, that girl still, she was still seeking, and yet she was awake. And then, yeah, seeking's gone. Just, yeah, it's funny. So everything that everybody says about this, realizing it or not, is kind of bullshit in a way. It can happen so idiosyncratically, like, and the mind can play such tricks. And I think if you're, I mean, I've come across people who have said that they felt it was too big a thing to say, like, oh, I'm awake. Like, because you're so used to, if you're someone who's used to making yourself small, it can seem like that until it's said a few times, and then it's like, well, of course it's nothing, but there's still something to kind of just getting past that and saying it, and then that goes, and then the doubt goes with it, you know. So I think there is something to be said for just admitting it, you know, not hiding it, having the courage to, and it can take a lot of balls too, you know. So you're waiting for someone to go, yeah, sure. Because maybe you're used to that, you know, someone cutting you down, or depends on your psychology. And go the other way and everybody think they're awake.
Or you think everyone's awake, and you're just playing catch up. Like, wait, is everyone? Well, I just.
Yeah. Yeah, the realization of it is weird in a way, because I suppose love's different. Because you're not really seeing anything different in a way, but I don't know. But then the whole visceral sense is going, that location going is kind of weird in a way if I think about it. And that sometimes sort of feels like it doesn't really matter whether I jump off a cliff or not, or it doesn't really matter, just switch it off. But yeah, when you draw your attention to it, it's kind of beautiful but free, and I don't know, nothing to cling on to, I suppose. Maybe. But then you can get caught up in thought and you get caught up in suffering. That can happen too. But it doesn't disturb anything either. It's just annoying.
So after you're awakened, there's if you just see someone behaving in a certain way in a particular moment, you can never say for sure that they wouldn't behave this way if they were awakened. They could do anything. They could kill themselves like that other guy. They could react in a way that's like anything. They can do anything.
It's less likely. They're likely to be more peaceable. Like, if they're a psychopath, they'll just be better. You won't know. That would go on because everything's instrumental. Everything still will be instrumental. That's quite rare. But yeah, I mean, they'd be less acted out because there'd be nothing. We're just peace, I suppose. Because it is like a stepping into sanity in one sense. So it's probably gonna. I mean, have you got a specific example? I mean, just like someone fighting or.
Yeah, like even something subtle like being different, feeling like you need to. Obviously, to me, there's a difference between feeling defensive, like in an argument or something, as opposed to like setting boundaries and healthy boundaries, and which can be expressed firmly if they need to be. But then at other times it's just like this. There's just defensiveness for the sake of being defensiveness, and you can sometimes see that in two people arguing or something, and then you're like, well, are they behaving? Are they acting from a sense of separation just in this moment, or could they be awakened and they're just in this moment, or is it just or is it sometimes obvious that that person's obviously not awakened?
I think a lot of that defensiveness falls away. A lot of it does. It's almost like, in a way, it makes you more vulnerable. If you're normal, kind of, then, there's going to be a lot less of that acting out, and there's more willingness to be hurt and to stay with something and
Be wrong.
yeah, be wrong. Being wrong is much more natural. Luckily, I'm never wrong. But yeah, it's because there's no. Yeah, so there's no hurt to that. Like it's not. But yeah, sometimes I realised that like afterwards, it's those defences were there for a reason. You know, like when you don't need them, but there were. You can be so open after this, but yeah. So there is a lot more responding on the whole. I think if someone's normal, there's going to be much more responding rather than reacting. There is, you know, I suppose the prefrontal cortex is kind of maybe switched on. You sort of rather than straight to, you know, react and can hear the other, be affected by the other, maybe. And also to tell people to go to hell when they need to be as well. Sometimes some people need to go the other way as well. That thing of being, people get confused with being unconditionally loving, isn't it? But yeah, there's more acceptance when things are irreconcilable. You know, when you can see that something's never going to work or be resolved, then that's kind of okay too. Or there's a acceptance in that's accepted in a way. It's not. It can be an awful or painful or whatever, but it's there. It's not trying to make it some other shape or. It's just how it is. And there's a lot of that in life, isn't there? Like, it's not even easy after awakening in a way. Life is, yeah, it's like, we'll always throw something in your path and just not a little bit of this. Like everything you avoided in life will come up and smack you in the face. And it's like, oh, I do not have the resources. Whatever. Good just to sit down and not think about anything. Yeah, that compulsive thinking falls away, it's good. And naturally emptiness arises, but also you can kind of dispense. James's head is front of the clock. Alright. It's James' clock. Sorry. What else have I not talked about? Other aspects?
Awakened psychopaths.
I think when someone's psychopathic, they've got the qualities that people look for in an awakened person. The awake person must be really confident. They must really know that tough love, you know. I know what you need, or just can change their mind or say something or know what's wrong, and people are really impressed by that. Like, wow, I aspire to that. You know, you want to be like that, and so you might get someone who's quite timid and actually that they might be really lovely. But yeah, I think we sort of think that sort of, you know, someone we want to talk to the strong one, but we kind of mistake that sort of vulnerability, which is the strength, isn't it? It's just that willing to be moved by another person, to be able to be moved by another person, and to really relate. So everything I think we just see now through our pathology in a way, our political orientations, our people we gravitate towards, you know, it's just, everything's just reflecting back where we are in a sense psychologically. Even after awakening you can change superficially. I mean, you could theoretically just think, right, I'm awake now, I'll just hang out with awake people, and then you realise they're all nuts or something, you know, like that they're the same as the people you had before, or, you know, like it's, because you haven't changed, when it's sort of like, get everything into focus, okay, that's someone being rude to me, that's not them being authentic, or, you know, like, the sort of start to really, when the emotion's really connected to our speech, and we can start to really recognise what's going on around us, and, you know. But they might be good in awakened psychopath, they might really give you a good push, you know, like, in some ways, like, the drive and motivation and the lack of fear, you know, which again is always seen as an awakened quality, but it's, you know, that can happen, but it's not actually. Most people have fear and normal reaction. Psychopaths have no change in cortisol or anything. If a lion jumps on top of them, there's no reaction. It's just, as you can imagine, it's really hard to imagine what that would be like. But
so would you say there are at least two types? So awakening with no emotional reactivity, and then awakening with emotional, not maybe reactivity, but with feeling.
Well, awakening to emptiness can be quite emotionally cold, but awakening to the fullness is love. Emotions can come and go in that, so it's not so much about the emotions. If there's less thought there may be much more emotional neutrality, so there may not be a lot, but it'll feel full anyway because the love is there and that's juicy, and the connection is there if you feel connected, and so it's kind of you know, and people are so different emotionally.
So it's like awakening to emptiness or awakening to fullness. The two flavors.
Well, awakening to emptiness usually, well, it always happens before the fullness, but sometimes it could be seen together, both. But or in a glimpse, it could be. But awakening to emptiness is often what happens first. So someone will experience that and then feel like there's nothing they can do to experience fullness, because that is the joy and the connection and seeing the sacred, and so it's very, very alive in that. So there's nothing that really could be wanted, you know. Desires could arise after a while, but they won't be so, there's not that clinging and that craving. It's not quite so like that. It's much more, you know, this is what I want, or
oh, that's interesting. I feel like maybe I'm in phase 1.
Oh right, okay, yeah, it sounds a bit like that, yeah. It can, the dark night of the soul is, desert. It can be a bit like a desert. It's often described as that. So
with glimpses of number 2.
Right, okay. Yeah, that makes sense as well, what you said.
Oh, now I want to arrive there.
It might settle, you know. There's a lot of people go through that process where it comes and goes, like, so touch wood. So there's not much to say about the emptiness, like, because I couldn't find it bad, but I didn't find it good. It really is just this nowhere, like, you know, so all my crazy, you know, that relief, just not having that desire, gotta do this, I need to do that, I want some thrill, I want some excitement, you know, can't be bothered with that, and will I go out, well, it's just, you know, shrug.
Maybe at the ecstatic dancing I'll get number 2.
Maybe. Yeah, I thought something had seriously gone wrong when I was seeing that. It's like, is this dissociation? Is this or this? Do depersonalization, derealization.
Yeah.
So I didn't mention that. I was really embarrassed. It's like, there's no self. I didn't know, like, I was just like, but it was so, there was no weight to my body, there was no body, there was just nothing here, it's just this air floating, you know. No, yeah, just pure spirit or something. It's like, that wasn't, yeah, I couldn't make sense of it.
Have you seen this research on more on meditation and mindfulness, talking about derealization, depression, but talking about it as side effects, like negative, they call it adverse effects of mindfulness. But
I'm kind of familiar with the idea, but I haven't seen.
What do you think of that? Because they call it, that's the part of the unfolding, then how can you call it an adverse effect that you need to sort of look out for?
Oh, well, is that not more like when people practice mindfulness to such a degree they become like automatons a bit, sort of
I think
detached
that's how they're framing it, but then obviously some of it will be just part of the whole process. That it's not you don't need treatment for it.
Oh, no, you don't. No, in your case, it or whatever, like what you're talking about. No, but I suppose if you're overdoing it, like people are just, oh, I'm eating food, you know, like just everything. It's just, yeah, that can, or just observing, or yeah, could numb you a bit, I suppose. And yeah, be very monotonous.
Okay.
But I mean, I don't know. I mean, I never did that, but I imagine that I've heard it so many times, so I can imagine that. Yeah. It's fun for a while, I suppose. Yeah, it's good to switch those things off, I think, too, isn't it? Just live normally too, just a bit of
Yeah.
But it's really hard. I think for a lot of people it's really hard not to go to extremes when they get into a practice, because it's just, it feels so natural, but that, you know.
I start to feel special for a while. Oh, this is interesting. Wow. Look at this and look at that. And
We see, I'm back to that, because I would be not back to it, but I would be very dismissive of my Kundalini experience, my energetic experiences, visions, and all these. Whereas now I just really relish them. It's like, wow, you know, this happened last night. You know, it's really, I find it really exciting. You know, so I don't dismiss that at all. I just find it. Anyway, yes, in a sense, it's got nothing to do with this, but.
yeah.
But it's still interesting in terms of reality. So in a sense, it's, you know, like, what is going on here? I mean, for me, that's maybe a question that can never be answered for me, but it's still a fascinating question. And the more you experience, the more it's like, you know, it's ever more complex. And I used to be like, yeah, so I love it when stuff happens like that. It's just, even if it's negative, it's like, you know. Well, I shouldn't say that actually. God, it's nice stuff when happy things happen. More angels. So.
Has it affected your work, or does it come into your work?
No, I find it difficult to study initially when I was, you know, studying psychotherapy and stuff. I found it very difficult to read and stuff, and initially, not very difficult. I could, but I guess. Whereas, I think my left brain, my left hemisphere was so died. Just like, it's alright. I'd read most of the books beforehand anyway, because I always loved psychology. Well, a lot of the books I'd come across, but yeah, so I didn't find it easy. Whereas now my brain is kind of normal. As normal as it ever was. No. But it's nice being with people now, like that, you know. I used to always be, when I'm talking to somebody, like, you know, you're really lost in thought or something, and really trying to focus on what somebody would say. It's just nice to be, you know. So.
Do you you respond to the intellectual content of conversations, or do you respond more to the sense you're getting of the person?
Probably both. Because I am a thinker, I love ideas and stuff like that, so I'm very engaged in that, but I'm very tuned in. Now I'm more tuned into, it's pretty, I don't know, I'm curious about all that stuff as well, what's going on internally, too. Well, I didn't always pick up on the big red flags. They were waving, flapping around. I'd have think I do a bit more now. I think I used to mistake fear for admiration and things like that. I didn't see what was beneath it. We have 10 minutes left. What? Anything now? That's good. I think seeing the sacred is the most amazing thing, though. It's just like, what is that? And like, it's just that visual aspect. It's like, whoa, how can that be? Like, it's just amazing. Everything just, I suppose, that normal grim grey reality. It's just, I was always trying to be in nature, but never in nature, It's like, I like walking in the woods, and I'd be like, cogitating, and then you're in the woods, and it's just, you're just seeing that, whatever, divine, whatever. I love using those words, I'm not allowed to use the word holy, divine. It's like,
Is that 24/7? Seeing the sacred.
I think that was more intense for the first couple of years or whatever, and it's there, but it's kind of normal life now, as well. So it's not like so. I mean, sometimes it is, but it's not. It just becomes more ordinary, more normal.
Do you experience more synchronicities?
There are times when they come about. I mean, definitely before awakening, there's been periods of life where those kind of events seem to constellate as if, and it feels very much like you're being guided or shown something, and that's another thing I used to dismiss, but I don't so much. They're really uncanny at times. It's really fascinating. I guess you're getting those as well. Exciting ones, or
sometimes little and exciting to me, sometimes things that other people would find exciting, but they seem to be more frequent, more and more frequent.
Escape and stuff like that happens. It's
But post awakening, they kind of, it's not all the time.
I can't remember the last time I had a kind of, apart from around the awakening time, quite a lot of that, and then more recent, every so often you get something.
I found that life is a synchronicity, so kind of sort of lost count, as it were, but it's all it's all.
It's a debut in spiritual circles, so it's not the synchronicities. I don't care about those things.
Is it? Why is it as taboo?
I don't know. There seems to. I don't know. It's like it's unimportant. I don't know if that's a sense you get of it. I suppose it was one It's like you wake up, you're not interested, but actually it is interesting and it's fascinating how things, in a short space of time events can kind of like it seems as if things are lining up, and that is interesting, and it feels good. It can feel really good. It can be very funny as well. Really, what? But I think it can happen at any stage. But I wasn't into the spiritual at all. I remember a period it was very like that, and it was just hilarious, but actually catastrophic and awful because they were kind of bad in the sense they put me in really bad situations, and it's odd.
They put you in bad situations.
Yeah, say no more. Well, just people appearing at certain times and just things just lining up to make the most bizarre and ridiculous things happen and seeming to. Clock is just there. James's head is no longer from the clock. It's not James' o'clock. It's nearly wine time. Or orange juice or tea, of course. But any questions left? You should get them in. James is in samadhi actually. That's great. Just sit in silence. I reckon double day.